Hi guys, welcome back to my channel ArtsyPutsy with me Putsy, and for today's video it's going to be a review, eye swatches, hand swatches, and also makeup tutorial. To be exact, 3 looks 1 palette using this palette right here. This is the Jaclyn Hill and Morphe collaboration. This is the Armed and Gorgeous palette, so if you want to see all of that then just keep on watching. So like I said before, in this video I'm going to give you a mini review, hand swatches, eye swatches, and 3 looks using the Morphe and Jaclyn Hill palette. I bought the entire fold, but for today's video I only going to talk about the Arm and Gorgeous palette, which is this one right here. But I will make a video on the other palette from this fold in the upcoming week, so if you don't want to miss out on those videos, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel. And I'm pretty sure you have seen this palette before, this collection before, because it was one of the most talked about makeup releases this year. And I know there were a lot of drama surrounding this palette when it was released, but I'm not going to talk about that, and I don't really listen to those drama. I'm just going to review this palette as if it's just another palette from another brand, another collaboration. I don't know. I'm not going to judge this because it's from Morphe or from Jaclyn Hill. I'm going to try to be as objective as I can. So this collection retails for $49 if you buy the whole entire fold, but you can buy the palette individually for $15, so you can save a lot of money if you buy the entire collection. If you only interested in one palette, then go buy them individually, but if you interested in 2 or 3 palettes, then why not just buy the entire collection, because it's way more affordable that way. I don't know if you can still buy the entire fold, because as of right now, as I'm filming this video, it's currently out of stock, and I don't know if they're going to restock and sell the entire fold again. But you can still buy the individual palette on Morphe website and also Ulta, I believe. But now let's just talk about this specific palette, the Arm and Gorgeous. This is the one that I kind of least most interested about besides the Ring the Alarm, because most of these colors are pretty neutral and basic. I mean, don't get me wrong, this is a gorgeous palette, but I already have most of the colors in this palette from another palette, like the Colourpop Yes Please palette. They have similar yellow, orange, browns, and so I don't really see a point to buy this palette, because the only color that I really interested to try is Top Secret right here. But nonetheless, this is still a really beautiful palette in my opinion, and really matches my sweater. But before I give you an overall review for this palette, let's just move on to the swatches first, and I'm going to show you hand swatches, eye swatches, and I'm also going to give you a little commentary about each shades while I swatch them. So if you want to see that, here it is. The first one is called VIP. It's a shimmer shadow. It's like a silvery white kind of color. It doesn't have a lot of fallout. It is quite smooth and creamy to the touch, have a nice pigmentation and applied quite smoothly. It doesn't look metallic enough though, even though it is one of the most metallic from the palette. It definitely looks even better applied with or with your finger. Next we have Access or Access. I don't know how to pronounce this one, but it is a matte shadow. It's a little bit sheer in application. My skin still peeks through the shadow a little bit, and not too evenly as well, but it's quite easy to blend, and the color itself is pretty. The consistency is quite soft compared to other shadow from this palette, but it's still not too creamy. Doesn't have a lot of kickback, doesn't have a lot of fallout as well. guilt trip. It's very sheer and doesn't apply evenly with dry brush. Definitely need to be applied with finger or wet. The formula is not too dry or chunky and quite soft, and I don't think it's meant to look extra metallic on the eyes because even with finger they are not too intense, but the color itself look pretty and it's such a nice everyday shimmer if you don't want your look to be too extra or intense, and maybe that's the way Jaclyn wanted to be. This is another shimmer shadow called Coin. Definitely much more pigmented and metallic than Guilt Trip, applied evenly and coat the lid rather nicely with dry brush, but definitely look way better and more metallic with finger or wet. I can tell this is much more creamy in formula than Guilt Trip and also has a little bit more fallout than the rest of the shimmer shadows. These look intense and pretty once you get the full pigmentation. Another matte shadow called Agent. Such a poor choice of word because it is an orange shadow. Quite a sheer formula. It's not patchy whatsoever because they applied evenly on my lid, but they are just sheer. Not pigmented enough and my skin still peeking through. They are not dry, but they are also definitely not a creamy buttery formula. I honestly think this is way better to use just as your transition shade because it's quite easy to blend. This is Top Secret, another matte shadow. This is the one I was most excited about. Beautiful color, one of the most sheer in my opinion and also the most patchy out of all of them, but that's kind of expected because this kind of color usually the most harder to formulate, and this one take a little bit more time to blend, but overall I still like this one because of the color. Another matte shadow that we have here is called Smooth Criminal. It's a medium, very warm tone brown, almost like it has a little bit of red undertone to it. Gorgeous for the crease or deepen up your outer corner. One of the most pigmented and the smoothest from the palette, and it blends quite easily, and I do think it's a really nice shadow. This is a matte shadow called Secure. Same as the other mattes, they are just very sheer even when you really pack them on. They have a really nice grip to it and don't fly away easily and blend quite nicely. Not bad at all, but this color actually looks very similar on the eyes, especially on the crease to Agents. They are not dry in formula and they are not creamy, but they do look kind of powdery on the eyes. The last matte from the palette is called Prowl. It's a nice deep chocolate brown, a little bit cooler in tone than Smooth Criminal, but in formula they are both very similar. Not crazily pigmented nor super creamy, but definitely one of the best matte shadow from the palette. It's great for deepening up the outer corner. I mean, it's the deepest color from the palette, and it also doesn't have a lot of fallout. The last one we have here is Classified. It's another shimmer shadow, also quite sheer, applied with a dry brush, not very metallic, and this one kind of emphasizes every folds and lines in your lids, but I love the color. It almost gives you a subtle duochrome effect, deep gold with bronze flip, but honestly this is just a really bad formula because the more I dip my brush, stick my finger in it, the harder it is to get any shadow. It pressed way too hard. So that's the swatches. It took me a very long time to swatch them, but I hope it helps and I hope you can see the color a lot better. The main point of the swatches is to show you mainly the color. I mean, you can see the performance of each shadows with a brush on the lid, but still the way you apply the shadows with different brushes, different technique, different application, it can make the shadow perform differently, but at least you can still see like the general performance of each shadows and also how the color looks like on the lid as well. But now I'm going to give you a little review of the palette as a whole. I mean, you already heard the commentary about each shadows, but as a whole palette, I still think this is a pretty good palette. I love the color combination, I love Top Secret. So overall, the matte shadows in this palette are not very pigmented. I feel like they are a little bit more on the sheer side. Wow, that's a mouthful. The shadows are not very creamy, but they are not dry at all, but they are just pressed a little bit too hard, I feel like. And you really need to build up the color on the lid if you want the full pigmentation from each shadows. They are not bad whatsoever because even though they are not very pigmented, they are quite easy to blend, and the sheerness of it makes the shadows easier to blend, I feel, and you can really control the intensity of the shadows as you like. Some of them actually blends a little bit harder than the others, but in general they blend really nicely. Especially Top Secret, that shadow is just very sheer and you really need to build them up to make them really shows up on the eyes. But most of the shadows really true to its color and really true to how it looks on the pen, and even though they are sheer, they don't blend into nothing on the eyes, and you can see where you place the color. You can see, I mean, in this look specifically, I can see the yellow, I can see the orange, I can see where I place the brown, I can see the green. They don't blend into nothing and they don't look muddy. They can be a little bit patchy in some areas. If you're not careful, they can look a little bit darker in some areas and a little bit lighter in some areas, but at the same time they don't look muddy. It's a little bit, I don't know, the formula is a little bit weird in my opinion. They look a little bit patchy but they blend really nicely. They are a little bit sheer but very easy to build up as well, and the sheerness make the shadow blends a little bit better. I don't know. Overall, they are a pretty good shadows, but it is a little bit trickier to use. I don't know how the fallout compared to the other shadows from the Fold, but this palette specifically, they don't have a lot of fallout. I mean, they do have a little bit of fallout if you're not careful, but overall, they're not that bad. And the shimmer shadows in this palette are definitely not my favorite shimmer formula that I have ever tried. Most of them are not very metallic. They only have 4 shimmer shadow in here. VIP and Coin are definitely one of the most metallic shimmer in this palette, but they are still not the most metallic shadow I've ever tried. VIP and Coin still shows up really nicely even with a dry brush, but overall, in my opinion, all of these shimmer shadows performs a lot better if you use a damp brush or if you use your finger. Guilt Trip is a little bit more, I don't know, it's not chunky but it's a little bit more loose. But Classified, I really don't like Classified at all. Even with my finger, they still don't shows up all that nice on the eyes and it's still a little bit sheer. I feel like Classified is pressed a little bit too hard even on the pen. When I dig my brush into these 3 shimmer shadows, you can still see the shimmer coming off and you can still see it's a little bit crumbly when you dig your brush into the pen. I mean, that's usually the case with most shimmer shadows, but with Classified, with the brush, even with my finger, even if I dig my finger in here, they just stick together and not, I don't know, not a lot of shadow coming off to the brush. And even with my finger, it's still not showing up all that well. So in general, I enjoy the matte shadows more than the shimmers. So overall, do I think this is the best palette I have ever tried? Definitely not. But do I think it's a bad one? Absolutely not as well, because I don't think this is the worst palette. I don't think this is a bad palette. I do think it's a good one, especially compared to the price. I mean, you have to take into consideration the price. It's only $15. You cannot expect this palette to perform like Natasha Denona or ABH or Urban Decay or something like that, because those shadows are a lot more expensive than this palette. I wasn't completely blown away by this palette because, in my opinion, with the same price range, $12 to $18, I can get ColourPop eyeshadow palette, and in my opinion, ColourPop shadows perform a little bit better than this specific palette. I don't know if I get a bad batch or if I get a good one, because even though I don't listen to the drama, I know that there are a lot of inconsistency within the production, which is why a lot of people get a really bad one, but some people get a really amazing palette as well. So I don't know if I get a good one or a bad one, but I have to be honest, I still feel a little bit disappointed just because I watched Jaclyn video for this palette and she said this is the best eyeshadow she ever tried, and she really make this palette as if it's a really amazing, the best quality ever. but I don't get that. That's why I was a little bit disappointed, because I don't expect this palette to perform as like a high-end eyeshadow palette, but at the same time I kinda expect this to perform like that because of the hype, because of Jaclyn's claim. If I never watched that video from Jaclyn, and if I only look at the price and look at quality and try to be very objective, this is still not a bad palette whatsoever. I still really enjoy them, but like I said, I was just a little bit disappointed because I kinda going in expecting more. Especially since most of the shadows, most of the color in here are pretty neutral and basic. I mean, the only shadow that are a little bit harder to formulate is Top Secret. So I know going in, Top Secret will be one of the hardest to work with, and I don't expect Top Secret to perform like a dream, because that color is usually the type of shadows that can work a little bit poorly. But other shadows like orange, yellow, and brown is pretty neutral, pretty basic, and it's kind of the easiest one to formulate, so it's not a bad one, but I still kind of expect something a little bit more, because those kind of shadows are not really hard to formulate, and the shimmer shadows in here also not something out of this world. It's not like duochrome, it's not very glittery, I don't know. But like I said before, overall, if I only look at the price, I mean, it's $15. It's still pretty good for a $15, but don't expect you'll get something like out of this world, extra amazing or something like that. But if you like the color, go get them, because it's a really pretty palette and you can use them for everyday basis. It's very fall appropriate as well, and you also do get a lot of shadows. Each pen are quite big, whereas the ColourPop shadows, you only get 12 and each pen is very small, so technically this is kind of more affordable than them. But yeah, that's just my review, my personal thought about this specific palette. I don't know if other palette will perform better or worse. We'll see in a couple of weeks, but for now, that's my review for this palette, and let's just move on to the tutorial, and I'm going to show you 3 looks using this palette. So if you wanna see that, then here it is. So that's the tutorial. I tried to include something very basic and easy for everyday basis, and I also include something like this is a little bit more advanced but still very easy, and I also tried to include something a little bit more advanced. I don't know if I did a great job, but I hope I did, and I hope you like this video. If you enjoyed this review, swatches and tutorial from me, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. The subscribe button is right down below, so you won't miss out on the reviews for the other palette from this collection. And lastly, I just want to say thank you so much for watching, and I hope I can see you in my next video. Bye guys!